Good afternoon, everybody. Came across many times a squid-like creature in people's atmospheres and stuff like that, even my own and even people I've worked with. One of the things I've noticed that they're not necessarily that the squids are very, very strong. They're usually, it's almost like they're something used by a higher being, and they're sent out and they're attached to self, and they're sometimes very, very hard. They're easy to get rid of, but you got to know where they are. They like to hide, and so unless you specifically ask to do that, then I find they can basically go unnoticed. And it really depends on how in depth and how organized that area is, and you can attract lots of them. And I heard the name Archon used many times for these specific beings, but to say that that squid is an organized alien being, I don't see that. I see it's used by maybe a higher alien being. Because when I actually follow it back to, for instance, the other day, it was like a huge eye with tentacles. That was in control of these beings. It's almost like they're used as I don't know, you can call it many, many, many things, but the squids themselves aren't really organized as much as the being that is using them. They're almost like a drone. They're not really have a mind so much of their own. They're used to receive information, to send information, to make you forget things, is one example. And I know there's a lot of things going on around these beings. So I'm going to actually just ask Spirit about this and actually travel to what is actually sending these out and to see what the purpose is. So this is kind of what I'm looking at. And I want to see what the spirit realm has to say about these beings. And because they are there, that is obvious because I came across them many times. And one key factor is that you need to acknowledge that specific thing to find them easily. And when you acknowledge it, your soul goes right to them. But if you don't acknowledge them, they can kind of hide themselves quite well. So I'm just going to take a couple of deep breaths in here. So with this intention, because when you come across these beings, you go inside them and they're almost like you can take control over them and you can do things with them. And you can travel back with them to the main source of where they came from. And that's how they remove them, is going to the main source and eliminating that thing's ability to be able to manipulate them. It's interesting. I'm just allowing this myself to just allow this to flow here. So what is the purpose of these beings? I see a man or some type of spirit. He's taking a big hammer and he's slamming it, and there's a wall in front of me and he's breaking this wall down and you can see it start to crack. And it cracks and all these squid things come pouring out around me. He says one of the main purpose of these things is control. Control of a human spiritual body in a way. To be able to manipulate it to do things that this specific being wants it to do. So what is the being? And I actually see all these things can form into one big, or they can be really, really, really tiny. So they can actually be extremely tiny and extremely big. So the question is, you build a wall and this being crashes through the wall and these things come running through. So the being that has broken the wall, that's a meaning in itself. That once the wall comes down, they come pouring in. So what do you mean in a way? It's easily interpreted as the wall comes down, you leave yourself vulnerable. But I don't believe in vulnerability, because these things can't really do anything unless you allow them to. But there's the understanding that sometimes these things affect you without you even realizing it. I give off a lot of light, and they don't like the light, so they stay backwards from me. They stay away from me. And I'm actually walking towards this man who broke the wall. And the man actually, as I walk up to him, he actually just kind of goes on one knee and bows down really low. And I ask him who he is. And he just turns into a squid himself and slithers away. And I need to follow this version of him. So I follow him. So there's a part of myself that is like looking back at all these squids, and there's lots and lots and lots of squids. Actually, not a big fan of leaving them here like this. So I actually go back and I get an orb and I pull them all inside an orb, and I take the wall away. There's no need of a wall to be here. And there's something to the idea of when we build walls, we believe we need to protect ourselves from something. So I actually throw a flower down, and the flower grows really, really, really quickly, and they're really, really, really bright. And I just leave that here, and with the understanding that the light from this flower, this lights up this place with love. And the idea that it needs to be protected is kind of false, because when you put a wall up, they can break through the wall. And if you just fill yourself with love and light, they don't come near you. It's like, it's not protection so much as just allowing your love and light to shine into your heart and take the walls down. There's no need for walls. And I take all these with me in this orb, and I follow this man back. And I keep... Okay, it splits up into two sections here. And I'm trying to figure out what the purpose of why it's going two directions. So I continue down this one path, absorbing all these squids, but I continue on the other way as well. And this way is false. So when you follow all the main ones, is false. It's like a false direction. It's like this. It's like it leads you to nowhere. The other place leads you to where it needs to go. And you need to be able to trust your heart to know which way to go, to follow these back. And I follow them back, this main guy, the guy that broke the wall in the first place. And he's standing on a ridge, and there's a whole, like, there's like ridiculous amount of squids, and I'm on a ridge, and I'm looking at all the squids, and there's like millions of them, and they're swimming into this clear liquid, but it's almost like they're flying through the air, but there is a liquid here. And I'm looking down at this, and I need to go down into here. There's a reason somewhere down further I need to go. And he dives down into the water, and he splashes into the water, but the water's like crystal clear. Like, I mean, there's not a speck of any dirt or anything in this water, so you can just see them. And I shine my light really bright, and I jump down into this water, and it's like literally going through, like, it's just so many of them. Like, sardines swim together in groups. This is like what this is like. And they're moving out of the way as this light comes down, and they're staying away from me. And I'm going down, 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 down into this liquid water. And I come to a spot where they don't come down any further. They just stay up in this floating area. And I walk. This one goes down and underneath this, it's like a cave, and I follow it down into the cave. And then it comes up out into a cave entrance in a way. But it's so different here. It's like a damp cave, and it's like, so he walks up. I walk like underneath, and I walk up onto the cave floor from the water. It's a pool. And there's 3 ways up. There's one that goes here, and 2 go up at an angle. But they level off and they go off somewhere else. And there's like, this whole area is one great big structure. I go up the center and I walk upwards. I'm walking up this, and the ground is very slippery. And I continue to walk up, and the dripping of the water is coming down. And there's parts where it's actually quite a bit of water coming down, and it's a very, very wet cave. And to try to do this in real life would be extremely difficult, because there's so much moss and stuff growing everywhere, and it's so slippery. But as a spirit, you don't slip, you don't fall unless you believe you will, right? And there's a doorway that there's quite a bit of water coming down. I walk through the doorway into a room. And the room is like I'm in knee deep of water. And I'm walking into this room. And this man's standing here in the center of this room. And he turns into a squid again, but it's really small, and just takes off down, like away from here. And I walk over, and there's kind of like an orb here. It's like a dimensional space. And it's interesting because you can see souls here. And there's something big in this room. It is like a huge eyeball. I've seen this before. It's like a massive eyeball that has like a bunch of arms and squid type arms. And it comes down onto like the ceiling. You look up, and there's a big eyeball staring at you. It's pretty creepy. And it comes down and above this orb and turns into, she's female actually, and it's like, she's humanoid with all these long tentacle things coming from her back of her body. And she's looking at this orb, and I'm standing beside her. And I ask her, why do you do this? Who is like, it's like one of the main things, why do you send these squids to people? She's like a goddess, really. And these things are all part of, she's like the mother of all of them. That's what she says. And the purpose is control, but it's also testing people. It is, but I said, but who controls you then? And that is interesting. When I say that, there's the images in the orb switch and change. and the tentacles goes kind of upward, and she goes, she tells me that the one that controls me controls everything. And but it's like God, but it's not God. It's like it is quite complicated because it is very, very, very old. It's like chaos, but it's different than chaos. Because these things aren't chaotic. They're very organized. A lot more organized than I thought they were. And she's like the hive mind in a way. It's like she has this eyeball, like she has a normal body, but when she's in the eyeball form has like a brain in the back of it with all these tentacles that go out. So it's like a big brain with an eyeball on it in a way. And when she's like this, she's more humanoid-like, and she doesn't wear any clothes, but she doesn't necessarily have like the detailed sexual organs that we would have, but she has like a feminine form with the tentacles that go backwards, but it doesn't have any of the features that we would define as like there's no nipples and stuff like that, and there's no body hair whatsoever. I'm looking at her and it's like, why? Like, this is an interesting thing because it's like, what is it then? Who I'm kind of, just give me a minute here, guys. I'm kind of stumbling over my words, but there's a lot of things kind of going on here, and I just need to take one thing at a time. And one of the things I ask her is when you send these things to people, is there like a time limit, or you leave them, or you just... She says when we send things to people, we will continue to send things to people until we're sent away. But then we'll send them back again, and it's like an ongoing process. And it's like testing people to overcome. It's not just fear, but the control of other things. It's like she says it's testing people to learn to control themselves, not just their physical bodies, but their spiritual bodies as well. And they're not necessarily evil, but they are manipulative, though, because she is told something, and she is to test people on the level in order for them to overcome it, to look into their own souls in order to overcome the things that are being brought forward. And it's like your higher self could come here and ask her to do this. Or it could be chaos. She doesn't... Chaos isn't it. It is more like... she shows me a circle. She shows me chaos in the center, and love on the outside. And there's multiple layers in between, and they're like in between these layers. And so all these, you pull it out in a 3-dimensional space, or a 4-dimensional space even, it looks more like, because it's really, really intricate. You can actually be a person's soul, and these can be attached to all these things. And she is just one of those layers. So they are not alien, and I don't look at them as an alien race. I look at them as she's like the hive mother of these beings, and there's something above her even. So can I see the person above you? And she opens up a gateway directly above me, and it's like a spinning vortex. And she says, you can go if you wish. There's like a warning to that statement, but I don't necessarily believe in fear. And she understands that. And she's actually very respectful for that, because she doesn't show her true form very often to people. But I've come across her in different ways and many times in the past, and there's some like respect to this. Like, it's like when you take these things, you can remove them, delete them, you can do all kinds of stuff to remove them from people. She says that as I remove these from other people, it gives them the opportunity to change a behavior that is creating them to be there in the first place. The trick is to learn to know what attracts them. And she smiles at this because it's kind of like a game for her. It's like she gets a little bit excited when she sees that a certain type of behavior attracts these things. And one of the things you have to learn is to learn about that behavior in order to send them away permanently so they don't keep coming back. Interesting. She's not evil. She's more of a neutral type energy. And she's actually quite intriguing for me as a spirit to see her. And it's actually quite interesting now when I see the whole mechanism, how it works. She's able to see a soul, a person, into this orb and focus on an individual. And when she focuses on an individual, she sees the things that need to be corrected in an individual. And so she sends these things to go and feed off that. And even it's like a very manipulative energy though, and it's very hard to see. So are they evil or are they not? Or are they there to really cause us pain and suffering? Not so much, but it's there to teach us things. So when we forget to do something, and then we realize that these things are there and we remove them, what was it that, this is important, what was it that you were forgetting to do? And that's the key to understanding why they're there in the first place. Interesting. So actually, thank her for giving me the opportunity to speak with her, but I need to go to what's above her. And I go to what's above her. A nice energy spinning. It's interesting. Like, it's almost like when I spun, all my atoms are torn apart, and now I'm in many different places. But I can feel all my parts, and when I speak, it's like it echoes, because all my parts speak at the same time. It's kind of strange. It's not really an echo. It's like like 1,000 or 1,000,000 voices speaking simultaneously. I see a black orb and with orange light around it, and I go towards that direction, and I go around this orb, and I go into the orb all together it's almost like an orange fire. It's almost like going into a sun is what it's like, with a dark core center, but the fire is only like a fraction, maybe 4 or 5% of the whole circular orb. It's quite small, while the sun is the opposite, right? We actually really don't completely know either, but we are speculating that the core of the sun is quite small compared to the size of it, but we don't really know what happens with the sun when it's fully large, and we know what happens when it becomes like a neutron star, when it implodes in on itself. But what is it? How deep is the core of the sun? Or how big is it? That's an interesting concept. I really don't have the answer to that. I can speculate though. as I'm going through, I go through the orange clear and or orange part, and there's like a really smooth surface just below the fire, and that's where I'm at. And a bunch of doorways open up, but there's only one way in. It's like interesting, like the whole bloody thing, there's like a million doorways and there's only one way in. And I need to go, and it's at the top area, and it's right at the very top. If it doesn't make any sense because there's no top bottom, it's a circle, right? But it's where it feels like it's the top, and I go to the top and I go in. And it's like energy is very, it's like very dense. It pushes, like there's a ton of weight. It just pushes on your soul. Very hard to move in here. And as you move, it's like you're kind of moving and you're over there. But there's like you move and you end up over here, but there's a line that still attaches you here. So you're actually moved to here, but part of yourself is still here, and there's still part of yourself is all the way in between. It's very weird. Even when you move, it creates like a motion, like you can see yourself going through everything. It's like really interesting. And there's like a really complex, intricate pattern here. Very, very complex. It's like a puzzle. Like a ridiculously complex puzzle of moving parts, and are golden in color. And you can see they come together just for a split second, and it creates an opening. Again, there's lots of this happening all the time. There's all these openings appearing and closing as this intricate shape in the middle moves. Like it's like a almost like sacred geometry as it's moving, and it's creating openings all over the place. And there's only one way to go. And I wait for that moment, and when it appears, I go there through that doorway again. And it's interesting because now I'm in a field, and the air is very light. I look up at the sky though, and it's like day and night. It's like half the sky is night and half the sky is day, and I'm on the day section. I came through the night side, and now I'm in the day side. It is very, very, very weird, and I turn around and I see the darkness behind me, and I continue to walk. And as I'm walking through the forest, it's not a forest, it's a field with the odd tree actually. It's quite long grass though. It's not even really a trail here. There's no pathway, it's just walking through tall grass. It's quite windy, and the grass is blowing. It's quite beautiful actually. The energy here is quite beautiful. And there's a person off in the distance. It's quite large actually, like I'm quite small. And it's almost like this is just regular short grass, and I'm like really tiny. So I actually grow bigger, and I'm actually now a normal size, and now it is only short grass. It's quite weird. And I'm walking though, and I'm quite big. The space is very low though, because when I stand like this, I'm actually standing up, and it's like the sky almost could reach out of this space. It is very weird space. It's like I could reach up really reach up into the sky itself, like into space, so to speak, but it's a blue sky with fluffy clouds. So when I stand up, my head's literally in the clouds, and I can reach up. So it is very unusual. So I shrink down a little bit more because that's just it's very confusing, because it's really hard to see because your heads are in the clouds. And so I go back down to a smaller size again. And when I shrink down, It's interesting because when I went up to as big as I thought I was supposed to, everything shrunk and my head was in the clouds. This is important. And I shrunk back down to the regular size, like the first size I came in. Everything now is really big, and it's the way it's supposed to be. And I go up beside this being, and he's sitting down. It's a male, and he's sitting down. He's looking towards a mountain range, and a waterfall, and a beautiful lake. And like he's just looking at this. And I sit down beside him, and he is kind of grumpy looking. Don't get me wrong, he's kind of weird looking, but I think itself is an illusion. And I grow to his size, and he grows extremely small. It's so weird, because if I try to be as big as him, I end up becoming ridiculously big. And so if I shrink back down, I can never meet his same size. So I either got to be ridiculously big or ridiculously small. So I choose to go to small because I can see things better. When I'm big like this, it just doesn't make any sense. This is very weird and interesting too at the same time. And I go around to his other side, and his face is happy, smiling. It's almost like he's two-faced, but his face is grumpy, it's not deformed, and this side's happy. So half his face is happy, half his face is sad, grumpy looking. And I ask him, so I sit in front of him, because I like the idea of sitting in front of him and looking back at him. So I'm looking him in the face and not looking from the side, because I like the idea of seeing both his reflections at the same time. And he says, which side would you choose to sit beside me? I say, I choose to sit so I can see both of you at the same time, to see your true nature and not just one or the other. Interesting, he says. Most people would sit to the right of me instead to the left. You came at me at the left and went to the right and chose to sit in front of me, facing me. It's an interesting choice, he says. I said, who are you? He said, I'm balance. My job is to keep balance. But balance can be a very lonely road. As you can see, I'm the only one here except for you, in this place of light and dark. And then he claps his hands, and literally now I'm sitting in light and dark, and the light is here and the darkness is here, and the side of his face is very sad and angry. It's kind of weird. And this side is very happy. And he says this is kind of his existence, is to stay in both places simultaneously to keep things in balance. So you're a reflection of God then? She says, yes, I am. We all are a reflection of God, are we not? And when he speaks his voice, both voices speak at the same time. I stay in the same line of light and dark, and I see both the sides of myself the same way. And I'm perfectly okay with that. And he knows that I am, and he respects that. Most people are afraid of the dark side, but you have come to embrace both like I have. And I ask him about the Archons, so to speak, that people call them that, and it's like the bright side of himself smiles and the dark side of himself also smiles. And so you are the ones that have created these, And it's interesting because now this is really cool because everything switches and I'm in a dark side of what he's saying. And he tells me that the dark side of himself, is the ones that created these beings to test us. And then it flips it around, and now I'm in the light side. So it's like really weird to watch this happen because the whole bloody thing switches. And actually he says that, and I'm the one that gives you the strength to overcome it. And it is all about learning. It's all about inner strength and knowledge, and not having fear, controlling your fear. And he stands up, and I stand up with him, and he actually states that people, well, like, he's really looking at people. Like he does this and he looks, and I turn around, I stand beside him again because it's really confusing to try to see what he's doing, and the whole world lights up of all these, the whole world, like he sees all the souls of the world. And he says, like, he shows the ones that are in balance and ones that are not, and there's so many people in the world that are not in balance. And that makes him very kind of like, he's not sad, he's disappointed. And he says people need to learn to bring themselves into balance. So if you want to know why I created the Archons, if you want to call them that, is to bring balance and not to be afraid. Because they will teach you how to bring yourself into balance. Is there anything else you wish to share with people, to the world? Do not be afraid of yourself. And he says of me, he says not to be afraid of me. Because people are afraid of things that are light and dark. I can show them my light side and people will be happy and glad, but when I show them my dark side, they run in fear. And how can a being like me exist when everybody is afraid? It is a lonely existence. But that is part of why I do what I do, is to teach people how to accept things that are different. And it's like a world, he says he would love to see a world that would truly embrace the differences. And this is one of the reasons why the world has so many different colors, so many different races, so many different religions, so many different borders, is to really get people to embrace each other's differences instead of fighting. And he sees the conflicts that are happening now as such a sad thing. And all throughout history is the same thing. The people do not understand that balance isn't about war and hate. It's about accepting of each other, accepting of people as one, accepting of people, accepting of their differences and accepting them for the way they are, but also not accepting things that are not in balance. And it doesn't mean you have to kill somebody, it just means you have to speak out against it, to stand up strong. Because if you are in balance, you will be able to stand up and speak the truth within your own heart, but not take a hammer to a person who disagrees with you, but shows them the love, why you came to that understanding, and let them choose their own paths. Because if he wanted to, he could turn his light or his dark side towards earth, but instead he chooses to keep both the light and the dark until people learn to overcome the dark and the light within themselves, to bring it all as one, all as in perfect harmony. You do not want me to turn the darkness towards the earth. But there's people out there that want the darkness to go to the earth. There's people who want the light to go to the earth. But I choose to shine both the light and the dark, so you will learn, you will grow. And then I will turn my light to the earth. That's pretty well a message that he wants to share with everybody. Thank you very much, and that was quite an interesting journey. I didn't quite expect that at all. A lot of interesting things that were said, though. And I'm not going to add any of my own opinions to this. I'm just going to let it be for what it is. If you wish to do a session with me, you can visit my website at amonrossawakening.com. And you can also visit my Northern Light page at josephbradleyauroras.com. Thank you very much, everybody, and have a wonderful day.